Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
CanusAlbinus,
Makahlua,
TheMeInTeam,
MegaBearsFan.
Welcome to PolyCast episode 439. I'm Makahlua, and we hope you're not tired of hearing about Civ 7, but with me, CanusAlbinus,
More Civ 7 all the time. And all the time, Civ 7.
TheMeInTeam,
when in doubt, spam it out.
and MegaBearsFan.
I'm totally here.
All right then.
Okay, well, so I guess the next important point of conversation is who are you going to be starting these diplomatic relationships with? They have not released a complete civilization roster, but I'm looking at the Well of Souls page here, and like they've got a pretty good list going already. I'm assuming some of this is still speculative. I don't think all of this has been formally seen yet, but they've got like 15 civilizations listed here, so some of which have more information than others, but I don't know, I mean, how do we want to go through all of these, or just like...
We can just list them off and leave the specific details to anyone who wants to look them up.
Okay,
So let's go with who's in the Antiquity era that we know of.
Yeah, so we've got
Amina, we saw her in the...
And we're talking about civilizations, not leaders.
Well, yes, but Axum. I was trying to get to the...
Yeah, Axum.
Egypt.
Egypt is
Rome.
there, Rome.
Arura, which is India. Maya. And I think
Because
that's
we've-
all.
Yeah, we didn't see the leader specifically, but we saw artwork of the city, of a Maya city.
Yeah.
I think that's all for the Antiquity age.
Yeah, we know of 5
So-
of those.
So then the next one would be exploration, and I see in this list, I don't remember seeing these, so I don't know how they got this information, but the Abbasids, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, I hope that was correct.
Yeah.
What else we got here?
Mongolia.
The Mongols came up several times, and in fact, they specifically mentioned how you unlock the Mongolian. So I guess we could backtrack a little bit here and talk about like how you change civilizations, because they did talk a little bit about that. And apparently different civilizations in the different ages are like linked through a historical context. So I think they specifically said that like Egypt can become the
Abbasids.
I thought it was the Songhai.
Well, they can become the Songhai as
Both
well.
of them.
And then they become the
Abbasids would
what
make
was the
more sense,
modern I think they said they
Uganda.
become Uganda.
Yeah.
Right? So that path is like always available. So this isn't like, so the way humankind worked, for context, is basically the first player who reached a new era could pick from any civilization that was in the game, and then no one else could pick that particular civilization for that era. So it was like a first come first serve mechanic. Civ 7 looks like you have to meet certain criteria to be able to unlock a given civ in a given era. And every civ will have at least one civilization that you can just like always unlock by default. I don't know if other like civs can unlock that. So what do you do if you're Egypt and someone else picked Songhai? Like, I don't know if that's possible, but I guess we'll find that out later.
Somewhere, and I don't remember where, you can have duplicates.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But anyway, they did specifically talk about the Mongolia, and they said that I think like by cultivating 3 horse resources in antiquity, you unlock the ability to switch to the Mongols in the Age of Exploration. So I assume that would mean like building whatever this game's equivalent of pastures is going to be over 3 horse resources.
Right.
Well, it makes sense in a broader context, because I think we've talked about before, what if the map shaped your civ? And in this case, if you start with a bunch of horse nearby, it can shape your civ. You're going to shape yourselves into the Mongols.
Very directly and explicitly, yeah. And then I think Ed Beach specifically said that like you could play the Normans are going to be an exploration era civ. Like I think he talked about like the Romans could become the Normans, and then the Normans could become the English. That was one example that he gave. And then I also see, the Songhai are in there, and then one of the like pre-order deluxe edition bonuses is supposedly going to be the Shawnee, and the leader Tecumseh. So this Well of Souls lists those as an exploration age civilization. So presumably there's going to be a lot more because you're going to need lots and lots of choices to make something like this work. Like humankind has a lot of civilizations in the game because they have to have one, they have to have like 10 of them or something for every single era that's in the game. And there were like 5 eras in that game. So there's like 50 something civilizations, I think.
Well, we're already seeing names in this very limited list, like not representative of the full game, even close, that have never appeared in previous Civ games as Civ options.
Well, and because of the civilization switching thing, that gives a lot more freedom to do stuff like that, because you can take civilizations that, existed for a much more limited time in real history, and you put them in that specific historic context, right? Like
I'm just saying, we probably will have a ton of Civs ultimately, based on what we're seeing already.
I think in the past it was common for Civ game to release with, what was it, like 20 Civs
18.
out of the box for 18. I mean, there's almost that many on just this list alone, and presumably, like, this isn't even scratching the surface. So I would not be surprised to see something like, maybe like 10 Civs per age. Like, sounds like maybe just like off the top of my head, maybe we're going to see 30 civilizations.
Yeah,
maybe more.
And like you have that with the horses where you become Mongolia, there'll be multiple ways to route into Mongolia. It'd be interesting to see if it's going to be mix and match the effect of you start out as the Maya, but you have horses, so now you become Mongolia. I don't know if that's a possibility, but that the tree that they showed, where they were showing how it went linked this one to link to the next one, the different paths that Egypt could take, it looked like it might be limited from who you started with, where you started with, which paths you could take. So maybe you don't end up with the humankind version of the Maya to the Mongols to something else. Although having one of the Mesoamerican civilizations suddenly have horses, and that's interesting in an alternate history kind of thing.
Well, but again, unless you met whatever requirements there are for unlocking that civilization, in which case there is a gameplay context for why you're able to choose that civilization, as opposed to humankind, where it's just completely
not
arbitrary.
Related whatsoever. Yeah,
like humankind is, like I said, it's first come first serve. So if you're the first person to reach that new era, it's like, okay, well, which civilization is just the best, because they weren't all necessarily balanced with each other. There were, certain civilizations in each era that, the meta says were better than others, and if you got there first, like, you would usually be picking that civilization. So this limits that more. So your gameplay decisions have more consequence. Your early gameplay decisions have more consequence for those later stages of the game. And then as for modern, we haven't seen a whole lot of like modern like gameplay. They talked about again, I think Buganda came up as a possible civilization that can emerge from Egypt and the Songhai. China is listed on here. I'm not sure where that came from. We saw Napoleon as a leader. Presumably that means we'll get a modern day France.
Because we saw Confucius.
Right, but we also know that the leaders are independent of the civs, so it's not necessarily the case that just because there is a leader from that civilization, that necessarily...
They list Great Walls of Wonder, and I don't know if maybe I missed that in part of the video stuff, that maybe we actually saw the Great Wall.
We did.
Sure, but again, if that's a wonder, that means it's not necessarily unique to China. Well, so, but I cannot imagine that the game will not have China.
The Great Wall and not have it unique to China. I mean, yeah, it'd be like, it looks like the pyramids are going to be unique to Egypt instead of everybody being able to build pyramids.
Yeah, it looks like different civilizations. Well, I don't think it's necessarily... Well, Well of Souls is saying that each civilization gets a bonus towards certain wonders. So I don't know that wonder is unique to that civilization, although, we have in the past seen national wonders be a thing in previous Civ games, so that's not completely unprecedented.
Egypt's unique is the necropolis.
Yeah, and then we've also got again, Ed Beach himself said you can go from Roman to Normans to English, so presumably modern day England will be in the game. I see Inca is listed on here, presumably just because we saw Machu Picchu as a wonder. That doesn't necessarily mean that Inca are in the game, but maybe they are. Presumably they would be an exploration age civilization. What else we got? Is that all the
Polynesia?
Yeah. And Polynesia, which I would think would maybe also be an exploration age civ, but like, maybe
No
not.
idea.
Maybe they're antiquity. I don't know. I would think probably Age of Exploration, because I would think their flavor would be about exploring the oceans, and that seems like that would fit best in with the gameplay style for the Age of Exploration. But
Maybe,
If you're
again,
we don't
limiting the
know.
map size, then you're probably not putting them in ancient.
yeah, that would definitely blow open the whole you only have access to one continent in the antiquity age theory that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, well, it just makes, I think, more sense.
And then, of course, as we talked about before, like every civilization is going to have unique districts, unique units, potentially unique wonders or bonuses towards building certain wonders. They're all, I guess, going to have their own custom civics trees, which, we saw Egypt had like 3 civics in it. So I would presume that the other civilizations would probably have similarly sized trees. Maybe some might have 2, maybe some might have 4. Who knows? I doubt we're going to see like a civilization that's going to have like 20 civics in a tree, but I don't know, who knows. Anything else about leaders? We know some of their bonuses, and do we want to talk about some of the specific bonuses that they've given to some of the leaders in civs?
Give me a second. Yeah. We don't. We've got Benjamin Franklin and Confucius that we haven't seen anything about the gameplay of.
Yeah,
no, we just like saw. We saw
that was their
Franklin.
examples for a scientific leader and a philosophical leader, opposed to the obvious military leader, things like Caesar
Yeah.
and
Oh,
Napoleon.
Yeah,
yeah,
showing that they're not committing to like actual historical leaders any
Right.
longer, and
Well,
they're
they're
more
not-
willing to.
They're not all heads of state, formal
Yes.
heads of state.
Yeah, what did I meant? Yeah, actual like.
But then
heads of
again,
state.
we've always had Gandhi, and Gandhi was never like a head of state. So
Yeah,
again, it's not
he was
like
kind of an outlier though.
yeah, he was, but like again, it's not like that. It's entirely unprecedented, and in fact, a lot of people complained about Gandhi being in like every Civ game because of the fact that he wasn't a head of state. So now they have a really good excuse for including Gandhi,
Yeah.
even though we haven't seen him. in any
Nobody's
of the
a head
previews
of
yet.
state.
It would be extremely surprising if Gandhi ultimately doesn't turn up. But yeah, we don't have like actual confirmation that he's in Civ 7, but he's
No, it's-
been in like every game that's had unique leaders.
It's all Gandhis all the way down. But anyway, so some simple examples of some of the civilization and leader bonuses that we've seen. Egypt has a Gifts of the Osiris ability, which gives them +1 production on navigable rivers, which we haven't talked about yet. Apparently, rivers will be navigable this time.
Some rivers will be navigable.
Some rivers, and I saw from some of the screenshots and videos like the rivers were like in the tiles instead of between the tiles.
Yeah.
So again, humankind did that as well. They didn't have like naval units going up the rivers, but like units could like embark along the rivers, and it just increased their movement speed as long as you were following the river. But it looks like this game is going to like explicitly allow certain naval units to navigate up certain rivers. So that will be a lot of fun to play around with.
Presumably in the ancient era.
Copying.
The
Hopefully the Vikings are in the game during the Age of Exploration to take advantage of that, because that will be a lot of fun.
Sail up your river, loot your city.
Yeah, and then the Songhai also have a bonus towards navigable rivers, which is probably part of the reason why they're related to the to Egypt. So they get, it says 15 trade route range to cities on navigable rivers, and trade ships cannot be plundered on navigable rivers. So that implies that we can plunder trade ships on navigable rivers, which again is making me very excited to play as the Vikings. Aksum gets +2 gold on resources. Pretty simple, pretty basic. The Maria get to choose an additional pantheon after unlocking mysticism. So I guess that's confirmation that some kind of pantheon and religion system is going to be in the game. Rome gets +1 culture on quarters in the capital and districts in towns. I'm not sure what a quarter is.
Well, that's in part of the cities segment, which comes up later.
Okay, well, I guess then we'll get to that. Maya is the palace gains science for adjacent vegetated tiles. I'm assuming vegetated is going to mean forests and jungles. Maybe there's other types of vegetation too. I don't know. Shawnee settlements built adjacent to navigable rivers gain increased food on river tiles, but cities not built adjacent to navigable rivers receive less food. So now we have a precedent for Civ 5 India kind of mechanics, where some civilizations are apparently going to have debuffs in their ability, which was a controversial thing in Civ 5. Apparently that's coming back.
What do you think the community is going to use as the shorthand for navigable river?
It is a difficult thing to say multiple times in quick succession.
I'm gonna predict Navi.
That would have been my guess too. Or maybe we just call them rivers and we call smaller rivers like tributaries or something like that.
That's way too wordy.
Yeah.
Where I'm
maybe.
from, we'd call it a crick, but
Creek?
that's
Sure.
no a crick.
Right, but I'm saying that
Creek.
a creek would also be another word that you could use.
That way you can have the creek on creeks.
Oh, what was I about to say? So we've got like what, 3 civilizations here that have abilities based around navigable rivers. So apparently they're pushing that hard.
Those are all early game civs, though. So
And they are all early game civs. That is true. And I would assume that navigating along rivers, I'm going to assume that like late in the game, your battleships are probably not cruising up rivers because that's maybe like a small ironclad, but and maybe a submarine hypothetically. But I would.
I would not want to be on a sub in hostile waters in a river.
I was gonna say I've heard a story of a submarine that went up a river. It didn't come back out the river because it got stuck on the sandbars because they don't stay the same. Every time there's a storm, the sand moves.
Right. So yeah, I would assume that navigable rivers probably becomes less of a big deal as the game goes on and ships get bigger and can't go up the rivers anyway. But we might also see that maybe canals are going to be back and stuff like that. So maybe they will remain important because you connect them with canals.
I think they should be important all game for trade at minimum.
Well, for trade, for sure, yeah. But like in terms of like naval action, I would assume the later game is going to get a lot less naval combat up and down rivers. But
naval combat wasn't really heavy in rivers at any point in history. They were mostly beneficial for logistics.
There was naval combat on rivers all the time.
I mean, the Vikings did a lot of raiding and pillaging along rivers.
Yeah, but they weren't like opposed at sea very frequently in doing so.
That's true. And in fact, a lot of times I think it was like things like traps and infrastructure that was designed to prevent that. Like they'd build like walls and put up like tightrope traps or whatever you want to call them. I don't know what they're, and mines and stuff like that. So I mean, maybe we'll be able to do stuff like that in this game. Who knows?
Yeah.
As far as
to your point, Canus, it happened, but I wouldn't say it was super common to have like 2 military warships on a river going at it with each other.
Well, and presumably because the rivers are only 1 tile wide, and presumably we can't. Well, I mean, there might be limited stacking, but if you are going to fight a war on a river, it's basically just going to be a conga line of units. So
yeah.
I just want to point out that the country of Bolivia, a landlocked nation, has a navy for its rivers.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe there'll be a civ in the game, and that will be their unique power.
I don't think even they have seen tons of actual wartime action, but
Well,
against other ships.
They lost their coast to Chile.
Yeah, I mean against other ships, because like if you have like military vessels in the water, like they have a very hard time dealing with shore batteries, really at any point in history, but especially before modern warships.
Well, but the point is that presumably Bolivia sees that as enough of a realistic threat that they're going to invest the money and resources into building that navy for that purpose. So
to oppose other ships, yeah, I guess. I mean, why else would they make it?
Maybe it's just a deterrent, but even so, right, they saw there was a reason to do that. So
I mean, it might be instead that they're using those vessels for like anti-personnel purposes and like area denial, because there aren't like naval batteries everywhere and there's an enemy artillery everywhere.
Well,
so you can have them like do stuff, but
to be fair, the country does have a holiday dedicated to one day regaining a coastline, where they literally pause all life in the capital and just play ocean sounds for 5 minutes.
But none of this is really supporting the naval versus naval combat in rivers being common historically, and I don't think it was.
I think largely Carthaginian stuff might be the most common, but
who fought them in the rivers willingly?
The Romans.
Often, or like this happened like here and there throughout their multiple wars. This happened a couple times.
I don't know specifically. I'm just going based on the assumption that triremes can row, so they would be easy to go up a river with.
Yeah, but like Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's beneficial, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's beneficial to fight your enemy there, especially if you outnumber the enemy with ships. Like, you wouldn't willingly engage them in a tight choke then.
At the very least, we know that we can plunder trade routes on navigable rivers, so
Yeah,
Yes.
get wrecked, civilian vessels.
that is an application. And if that can happen, then that creates a pressure on civs who have trade routes along navigable rivers to build defensive units to potentially protect those trade routes. So, anyway, yeah, do we want to go through these leader bonuses too?
Might as well. There's only 4 of them.
All right, so leader bonuses that we know of. We have seen Amina gets +1 resource capacity in cities. Not sure what resource capacity means. Maybe that's something along Civ 6 where you accumulate resources in a stockpile. +1 gold per age for each resource assigned to cities. And +5 combat strength on all units in plains and deserts. So apparently we get to assign resources to cities for various purposes, which is also something that I think is really cool, because this is something I've mentioned many times before, is I would like for there to be more domestic uses for strategic resources in particular. Like, I would like to be able to, like, assign like oil to like a public transportation system or something like that provides certain benefits in a city, like reduces pollution or slows down climate change, or increases citizen happiness or productivity or whatever. So maybe we're getting something like that. That could be cool.
Could be. I want to know what the resource is before I get excited about it.
Yeah. Let's see. Maybe you just assign coffee to all of your cities and to triple everyone's productivity. Who knows?
And their
Coffee is a strategic resource now.
lower their health rates.
Hey.
Yes, and they all die of heart attacks in their 30s from being
not.
over-caffeinated.
Well, and if you're like
Not.
literally drinking, like,
You're only drinking if you're
6 times the
mainlining that.
recommended amount.
Yeah, exactly. A cup a
you're-
day is not going to kill you.
If you're drinking enough coffee to triple your performance, you are drinking too much.
Yeah, that
Everybody's caffeine tolerance is different, though. One person,
that
one
boost
cup
would
of
be a
coffee.
little
could-
excessive. Yes, from a gameplay standpoint, for most things, tripling would be very questionable.
Yeah, it would probably be double, because that's Sid Meier's rule, is you always double or half something. All right,
Can
so
we just
next,
have like a reasonable boost for something like this?
plus a 0.25% bonus to whatever. All right, so what do we got
yields.
next? Ashoka, +1 food in cities for every 5 excess happiness, plus 10% food in all settlements during a celebration. All buildings gain +1 happiness adjacency for all improvements.
What does adjacency mean in this game? I do not know.
Yeah, we don't really know yet. I'm also not sure what improvements means either, because they were talking about builders and workers being gone, and like that sort of, I think at some point they said what you would call an improvement in previous Civ games is now called a rural district.
It's not
So I'm
a
not.
district so much as it's a rural tile.
Yeah,
We'll
so I'm
get
not
to that
sure.
in the cities section, which is
Yeah.
coming up next.
Right, sure. So next up, Augustus, +1 production in the capital for every town, which we'll talk about later.
Yep.
Can purchase culture buildings in towns, and plus 50% gold towards purchasing buildings in towns. So Augustus loves his towns, apparently. And then the other leader we've seen, which has been the big one that they've been playing the game with and all the previews and stuff, is Hatshepsut, who gets +1 culture for every imported resource, and plus 15% production towards constructing buildings and wonders in cities adjacent to navigable rivers. So more navigable river bonuses.
Welcome back, Hattie.
So we want to move on to cities and actually talk about what the heck the difference between a city and a town is. Well, here's what we know. For a city is founded by the settler, or not the settler, I don't think. They're founded by a founder.
The capital city is anyway.
Capital city is founded by a founder. Towns and cities are both referred to as settlements. So new settlements are founded as towns, which have no build queue and convert all their production to gold. Items in towns can only be bought with gold. Population is permanently assigned to work tiles, which is automatically improved when the tile is selected. There is no more need to move them or change a city's output in handling citizens. So there's no more citizen control in the city screen. Towns can be converted to cities by spending gold. The cost increases with the number of cities you already control. Towns can adopt permanent specialization bonuses. Farming towns, mining towns, military forts, trading outposts.
Yeah, this also kind of reminds me also of Humankind, because the Humankind also did not have citizen management in its cities. Instead, the way that game worked is whenever you built a district, that district gave you the yield from all adjacent tiles automatically. And the districts themselves would have adjacency bonuses with each other. So as you expanded, you would get yield from those newly adjacent tiles, but then also adjacency bonuses from the inner districts that you had already built. So it sounds like they might be doing something more along those lines, at least for towns.
City borders expand when you build an improvement, which it says here in quotes is a rural district, but I'm not sure that's what it actually is. By claiming all adjacent tiles. At least one source, PC Gamer in this case, claims that you can still purchase tiles. At the top of the screen, there is a settlement cap, which increases over time. If you have more cities than this cap, you're subject to a happiness penalty, but you are not prevented from increasing your number of cities above the cap.
We're getting more Civ 5 BS apparently.
Towns send their excess food to cities. To grow as quickly as possible, you want the fewest number of cities to split the amount.
So, Canus, it sounds, I think you've in the past expressed an interest in bringing back the old colony mechanics from Civ 3 or something analogous. It sounds like this might kind of be that.
No.
Not really. Because in Civ 3, what you would do is you would send a worker outside your borders to a resource and then build the colony there. And it wouldn't be inside your resources. It would not be inside your colony, but you would have access to the resource.
It would not be inside your culture.
Right.
You said a couple different things there, but yeah, it would not be like part of your empire beyond the fact that you have a fort on it. And
yeah, basically.
There was still a risk of other nations settling that resource and basically taking it from you in doing so.
Right.
Yeah, so I wonder how much of a similar role these towns will fill, or if they're just
these are basically
different.
lesser cities.
Yeah.
They have your culture, you're still growing them, etc. Like they're nothing like Civ 3.
It's like you
resource forts.
Looking from what was in the trailers and stuff, it's like the settlement is like a proto city, and eventually it will become a city, but
That's
you have
also,
to invest in it.
Okay, so
you
it's
have to decide
also
to make it one.
Yeah, that is also basically how Humankind worked. Is in Humankind you would found an outpost, and then that as you accumulated food, the outpost would eventually grow into an actual city, and then be able to.
You theoretically could put a settlement out there if you knew a specific resource you wanted to get. Like when you first go to the New World part, probably in the Age of Exploration, that's what you'll do. But I don't think you're committed to making it a town, though.
Right.
Well, and that's what I was kind of getting at is they're smaller automated towns. So you put them, you could hypothetically use them to put them out in, further away. And I mean, depending, I guess, on how many you're able to build and like how resource intensive it is, like, I mean, maybe you could just build one out in the middle of nowhere to collect resources and just let it automate itself and not worry about it. And maybe in that sense, it kind of fills a similar role as the old colonies. Because you don't have to go in and manage the population and build queues and stuff like that. So you could hypothetically just plop some of these down next to resources, then forget them.
It's probably a bad idea to do that.
Probably.
Like, that's based on what I'm reading on this, that will be so bad that you won't want to do it, period.
Yeah, you're probably
mostly because
right.
These are going to be a significant part of your empire. And even just reading what we know now, it looks like there's at least some incentive to constrain the number of them you upgrade to cities in order to get your cities to be mega population centers that best take advantage of multiplicative benefits. So it looks pretty likely that these are going to be a significant fraction of your empire throughout the game. Just reading over how they function, because they're going to be useful as towns. And
sure, but it also
and Augustus is getting bonuses to towns, even further disincentivizing upgrading them to cities unless you really need it for another purpose. But I think most civs are going to be like that.
What I'm getting at, though, is that because it also sounds like because these towns give resources back to your cities, you're going to want more towns than you have cities. So there's going to be more town spam, which means putting more towns out in the fringes, for things like collecting resources and territory control and stuff like that, which means there's probably also going to be a lot more fighting over towns.
That resource better be darned important, though, because you have a settlement cap, according to this, which I'm not I mean, it depends if you can increase it. But
But it's a
You
let's
can
just say that
definitely increase it.
let's
There's-
just say that it matters
we've
in any
seen
capacity.
things-
If you are constrained on the number of settlements you have, period, then you will want to place your towns in a way that you get the most benefit possible. And very rarely is a single resource going to be competitive with it giving you a bunch of gold, a bunch of food, and a bunch of other things, and maybe still a resource at other sites.
Strategic ones possible.
Yeah, but again, that better be a very important strategic resource.
But
Like if this is the difference between you getting nukes or not, yeah, you're probably going to spend one of your settlement slots to go make nukes. But
Yeah, but we have seen that there's going to be increases in the limits, and it is, as I've said before, a soft cap. You can exceed it if you need it.
yeah, I have reservations about that though, because that goes back to the getting dogpiled on by influence and just screwing your happiness when you're already screwing your own happiness. That sounds like a trap to me, but we'll see. And maybe you can eventually increase it so you can own the whole world. That's just late game. That could be too. But until I know how constraining it is, it's hard to say. But presumably, if we're going to have a cap, then at least for a significant fraction of the game, it's going to be a meaningful restriction on how many of these things you make.
As far as I know, we have already seen in the Antiquity era ways to increase the settlement cap. So I don't believe it is a significant hindrance if you're looking at expanding the way you would in Civ 5.
Well, and it's also, a big question is what is that cap relative to how much space there is to play with on the map, and does that
that's true too.
Does that cap scale with things like map size and game speed, stuff like that? So if I'm playing on, if the cap is 20, right, and I'm playing on a dual map, right?
It's got to scale with that. It would be nonsense if it didn't scale with map size.
I mean, if there's only room to build 5 towns and cities on the map anyway, then it's not really that big of a. It
well,
really
then you
isn't a
de facto
functional
don't have a cap.
So, yeah.
There's no way that this wouldn't scale with map size. Game speed, it might not, because
Game
I don't
speed, maybe
necessarily
not,
think
but
it needs to with game speed. But with map size, it absolutely has to. Otherwise, it's nonsense. Like you don't have a cap on small maps.
The
on
only
big maps you could never settle like most of the world for most of the game. That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, the only reason that I could see a settlement cap scaling with game speed is if the cap were on every settlement you have ever built. So if you lose settlements, that still counts towards your cap. In which case, game speed might affect how often you can found and then potentially lose settlements, but that's super fringe. I doubt that's happening.
I don't think that mechanic should be in the game, and I would be surprised if it were. Like if you lose a settlement, it still counts against your cap. That's
we talk about districts now.
Sure.
Okay, so for cities, each city tile represents a district. An urban district may have up to 2 buildings in it, at least as far as we've seen in the Antiquity era. Probably increase over time. Excuse me. All buildings, including the former city center buildings, must be placed in an urban district. Urban districts must be placed adjacent to other urban districts. When you assign a population to work a resource tile, that tile is automatically improved and becomes a rural district. Talked about before. Urban district that has 2 buildings in it or is full becomes called a quarter. If you build 2 of a civilization's unique buildings in the same district, it becomes a unique quarter with special bonuses. Rural districts are permanent, but they can be overwritten by urban districts, like improvements from previous iterations of Civ. Districts can only be placed next to existing ones.
Again, that's similar to humankind. So no more building a campus district 3 tiles away from your city center in the middle of a bunch of mountains and rainforests.
Right. Capitals start with the palace in an urban district. Other towns and cities appear to have a central building like a city hall or a town hall. Sometimes these are mentioned in leader attributes, so presumably there's some sort of bonus that comes with some of them. Now here's where we get to the fun part. More than one urban district in each city can have walls, making each a fortified district. All fortified districts must be captured in order to capture the city. It is not clear whether walls represent a single building taking up one of the building slots or is designated in some other way. But we've seen pictures of 3 tiles in a city being walled and some of the others not being.
So does that mean you have to build the walls separately on each district?
We're not sure.
As opposed to just building them in the city center and it covering all of the districts?
The rules here are just not clear. So
presumably you have to build each wall for each district, but there's no clarification saying where those buildings are, if they're part of a district, or if they are one of the buildings in a building slot in a district. It just does not say. We do not have enough information.
I would really hope that they don't take up a slot, because then that would create a situation where you already built 2 buildings in your district and now you need to defend them because someone's getting hostile. You would not be able to build a wall, or you would have to tear down an existing building.
I think that constraint is healthy. If you want to be better defended, it comes at the expense of your production. And if you still want to defend yourself, use military units.
Okay,
Or like pick your spots for walls, which could be strategic then.
we only know about a few different buildings with real clarity. So we've got the granary, which is just 1 food per farm, and it presumably gets adjacency bonuses. We do not know a whole lot about those right now. Excuse me. There's a building called an altar, which we know nothing about. There's a garden building, which is +3 food, +1 food for each coastal terrain, lake, navigable river, or wonder, and also +1 to the settlement limit. We've got a dock. We don't really know exactly what that does, or if it's anything like the district that is the harbor in Civ 6. There's a bath building, +4 food, +1 food on the 4 things we listed earlier, plus 10% growth rate, and must be placed on a river. Got the market, +2 gold, +1 gold for each adjacent coast tile, lake, navigable river, wonder. Increases the number of resources that can be assigned to this settlement by 1. And then we have a train station, which we know nothing about, but it looks cool. And then there's this long list of unique culture, unique building, unique happiness, unique gold, unique everything stuff. You've got the Egyptian ones. Do we want to go through all these specific ones, or do we want to just move on to the wonders?
I don't think so, because like we're gonna get like this kind of stuff is subject to balancing changes and stuff probably, and you can probably figure out that the buildings are going to give you benefits of a certain kind when you make them.
Unless you see maybe something that gives a clue about like a gameplay mechanic we don't otherwise know about. You know, like for example, the previous leader abilities told us that, oh, there are navigable rivers.
Oh, all the previous buildings apparently can obsolete at some point, because all the unique buildings say ageless next to them, which would to me say they don't obsolete.
They didn't specify it with the granary, but I could swear in one of the videos I did see that was ageless. There were already some other basic buildings that were ageless in the videos.
Yeah, some of them makes more sense than others to be ageless.
Yeah.
And confirmed wonders. Is that on our list? It should be. Confirmed wonders.
It falls under the cities category, I suppose.
Oracle of Delphi, the pyramids, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Great Wall, the Colosseum, the Angkor Wat, the Taj Mahal, the Serpent Mound, the Dur Sarakin, which is the capital of Sargon II of Akkad, a Korean bell called the Imile Bell, a stone monument in Tonga that I cannot pronounce, Ha'amanga Maui, Mausoleum Theodoric, Nalanda, the Terracotta Army, the Hanging Gardens, the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, Petra, Machu Picchu, Pyramids of the Sun, Askia's Tomb, Oxford University, Statue of Liberty, Eiffel Tower, Brandenburg Gate, Apollo Program, and then there's some here that are unclear. This one looks a lot. The first one on the list looks a lot like the Borobudur from Civ 5, and the other 2 are very cool, but I do not know what they are.
You also missed the Great Stele.
The Great Stele? Oh, yes, I did. We just don't have a picture of the Colossus of Rhodes. Alright, Army Commanders in our talk of units.
Apparently they're our newest version of the Great General. A couple things stand out about them. They have like upgrade trees that are reminiscent of like unit promotions in Civ 5 and 6, but are for the Army Commander himself, and maybe the units still have their own promotion trees.
They don't.
They don't? Oh,
they do not. The Army
Is
Commander...
Is that confirmed?
Yes.
Okay.
The
Army Commander's like most impactful thing from my perspective is the fact that they can like suck in units into one tile and move around like that and then push them out to deploy them. So that should make like moving between fronts much less tedious.
Yeah,
it is
and again,
the
that's
only
something
unit that gets experience and promotions.
Yeah, and again, that's also something that is similar to humankind, where you group your armies together and then deploy them. Although it looks like, from what I could see, it looks like once they're deployed, they basically work similar to how units have worked in Civ 5 and Civ 6. It's not
Yeah.
like I don't think it's going to be like humankind, where you have a little mini battle that takes place entirely within one turn.
No,
So
that would be catastrophically bad.
Yeah, it looks like it was a regular map battle once you
Yeah, we just need to switch to a Bannerlord fight for every fight.
one thing
between
that
commanders.
One thing that concerned me is in the video where they showed the general or the commander meeting another army in the field and then deploying its units. It kind of looked like the player just pushed a button and the units deployed. I really hope we get to choose how we position the units when they get deployed, because
Yeah, I agree.
There are two buttons, one for deploy manually and one for deploy automatically.
well, all right, I guess that answers that question.
And then you have one real button, and that's deploy manually, because you do not want your archers in front of your.
Well, it knows
line
better
infantry.
than to put the archers in the front.
Well, hopefully, but I mean, are you surrounded?
You were saying that with way more confidence than is earned by auto AI tactics anything.
Good point.
But
Made
also,
by Firaxis or otherwise.
But also, if you move your army in between multiple other enemy units or armies, then what constitutes the front? So
yeah, there's just a lot that can go wrong with auto deployment. Unless you have 6 infantrymen, then okay, fine, just auto deploy that. It's not gonna matter.
I would also kind of hope that there's an easy undo button for that. So if you do auto deploy them, either accidentally or because you don't think there should be a problem, and then you realize that it did do something stupid, hopefully you can then manually move them or put them back in the army commander and then deploy them manually. Hopefully that doesn't cost actions. I don't know.
I believe the deployment costs actions, but when the units are released from the army commander, they have their actions still.
Now, what happens if the army commander gets hit while he still has the units bunched on him?
The units take damage.
Do they fight effectively, or is it that's in you murder the entire army by attacking them before they've deployed?
Unclear.
Yeah. Presumably you would want your units to be deployed, and there would be a substantial downside to being attacked while they're all stacked like that. I mean, at the very least, I'm sure there'll be a collateral damage kind of thing, like what catapults would do against stacks in Civ 4.
Unclear.
Yeah, I just can't wait to already down an AI commander while it's not deployed with 3 or 4 already, and just make the entire thing useless.
But this
deploy.
This has a lot of knock-on effects for other things in the game. For example, this completely changes how roads and railroads are used, right? Because instead of having to move your units as a carpet and put them in a conga line along a road, you stack them into this one commander, and then that commander moves along the road at presumably a faster movement rate. So roads between cities and to the front lines are potentially going to be much more useful. Same with railroads. Again, how is this going to work for things like embarkation, or are we going to go back to having naval transport units that we have to load the units into? Can an individual unit embark, or does it have to have a commander and then the commander embarks?
Individual units can embark.
Oh, okay. But can they embark as presumably they can also embark as a army under the commander, hopefully.
Presumably.
And then that would also be devastating if that were to be probably ambushed at sea by an enemy frigate or battleship or something like that.
Yeah, as well it should be.
So hopefully,
hold on,
we
gotta
AI
get through all the other abilities of the army commander before we can make that kind of stuff.
Okay, so Commander Connect is auto reinforce for new units. So yeah, that will help logistics a bit too.
They disappear from the map, so you don't have to manually route them.
Yeah, it's like vectoring from Warlords 2, and all of our listeners will know exactly what that was like in Warlords 2.
I'm sure they will.
Commanders can also issue orders to nearby units, giving them a bonus.
We talk about their skill trees?
Have we had full reveals of what everything unlocks in the skill trees? I mentioned that they have them, and that you'll have to pick between the upgrades, but
we don't really know, do we?
Yeah, let's just leave it at that for now then, until we have more information, because I've only seen the mouse over for the logistics thing. And presumably the others are also beneficial, and you want all of them, but you can't have all of them.
Well, that
So-
one logistics one is, I think, kind of an important one, because what it does say is +2 unit slots and faster reinforcement for this commander, which suggests that these commanders, definitely have a finite number of units that they can, have stacked upon them, and that number is low enough that adding, 2 is hopefully a substantial upgrade, substantial enough upgrade to warrant, making it a promotion.
I think it starts at 3, and you get 1 from one other thing, and then 2 from the last one.
Yeah, I would also not be surprised if things like technologies and civics might increase those limits. Like, you might also have things like maybe commanders that are trained at barrackses might increase that, limit. You could have all kinds of different things that could influence those limits.
The priority for this will also depend on how impactful the other things are. Like, if you're getting a huge bonus to your military units from assault directly, like your commander orders them, they get this bonus, and that bonus stacks to something in assault, so you get like +15 strength or something. Then maybe, even though you want this +2 slots, maybe you want that other one more first.
Right, but that then means that your individual armies become very specialized and become used for specific, tactics and specific strategies. Which
there's also a question: how many
interesting.
Commanders can we field, and how expensive?
Oh
are
yeah,
they
is there going to be a
generate?
limit to those? Like, hopefully they're not like, these aren't great people, right? Like, are commanders units that you build, or are they great people like generals were?
We don't know exactly, but I think if they get killed, they do respawn at their capital at some point.
So you probably will be limited on how many you can have then.
Yeah, and then presumably that limit will probably be increased by technologies, civics, and buildings and stuff like that.
I would hope so. It would make sense.
Well, we know that, again, as we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things a lot of icons on the techs and civics. So presumably they have to be doing a lot of little things, probably providing little passive buffs all over the place. Because I can't imagine every one of those icons is like a building or a unit,
This seems like the kind of thing government choice would influence too.
Yeah, perhaps certain governments might give you more generals or more commanders, or increase the unit cap for them. I could easily see that being like the benefit of like a fascism government or something like that.
We also seem to have images that fleets can behave similarly on the water.
Yeah, I wonder if there's an admiral unit.
Probably.
Yeah, or, well, maybe they might call it a navy commander, since that would be more consistent, I guess. But
even more opportunities to smash groups of units while they're defenseless.
And I guess the fact that it is called an army commander and not a general opens up the possibility that maybe there are also great people generals. Maybe?
Possibly, but I doubt it, because it has the same great general style combat bonuses.
Yeah, and if you're stacking modifiers like that, like, it gives players the opportunity to just take the AI to the cleaners by just simply having everything together, which the AI probably won't.
So
that was already a problem in Civ 6 with armies. Like, if you make an army, and the AI often won't, so you can just like kill it with armies later in the game, even if it's ahead of you.
Oh, I forgot to stick that on the topic list, but we need to talk about units. Who's next on the list?
It was supposed to be Mackie with Techs and Civics.
She already covered that in the first topic that she did.
Yeah, I kind of got it.
Combined them.
But there's also not much we know with Techs and Civics so far.
Yeah.
You want to do
And
the
those
units
things
then?
were related pretty effectively, so.
Oops, did I lose my?
All right, Mackie, tell us about units.
We have them. Hold on a second. I somehow
Yeah. There's going to be units.
will be units.
Oh,
Okay,
does
first off, the
anything
big
jump out
thing,
here?
and I think, yeah, because this is one that I think some people aren't. I see how they're doing it by seeing how they were building a city and why they did this, but there are no worker or builder units because your tiles are going to get improved automatically when they get worked by the city population. And I did see that also had to do with the as your population grow, you would get a new tile and you got to pick the new tile, which also, thank you, let me pick the tiles.
Yeah,
Workers, do you guys not have phones?
It sounded like what they said happens is basically whenever you get a new instead of building districts with production, it sounds like whenever you get a new point of population, you place a district, and that population is basically permanently assigned to that district. So it looks like we also don't have the citizen management where you move citizens between different tiles and stuff like that. They just always work the thing that they were assigned to work, automatically forever.
Yeah, so you got to think about that. Do you want another urban district or do you want a rural district? Like in the example city, they had some dates nearby, so that's a great place to put a rural district, and then you get more food that way. There's also other ones you could see that would have been a good production district that you might want to do later, and think about that. That. I think I like it, but I'm going to have to actually play it before I know that I like it. You know?
Yeah.
Something funny that I see
think
under
it's
the
fun. Enjoy.
under the screenshots for fleets. I see a picture of a horse standing in the water.
That's presumably an army commander.
Yeah, possibly.
So maybe there isn't a separate unit. Maybe it's just the same thing.
Or that's just an embarked army commander.
But he's on his horse.
Yeah, you can ride your horse on a ship.
Well, the horse isn't on the ship. It's
Yeah,
just
it's in the water.
So
Your
it's
horse
like
is
does-
the ship.
It does say right here, units can embark over shallow water by default.
I'm going to put that to developer art. But when you tell units to fortify, they actually build visible fortifications, which is really cool.
Build my
I
little
wouldn't-
stick fort.
like, do you get to like place those fortifications?
No,
or is
No,
it
it's
just
just
a...
it's just on the tile where the unit is.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
presuming it's like earlier games where you hit fortify button and your unit.
Yeah, so they got the defense bonus, but
fortifies
now
there.
they're giving you an actual like little makeshift fort to let you know that they're fortified.
I think older Civ games maybe had like a little animation or graphic of like the unit being behind like a wooden palisade or something like that.
Yeah, or they would they would take a stance that makes it obvious that they're fortified, etc. Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
from the video footage that when you do this with the scout, they get up on a little lookout. I mean, that's their thing is a lookout.
Well,
as
Well,
a
that's
like
like
a
a
whole-
special ability.
Yeah,
for-
that's like a
Yeah.
whole mechanic, and that
Yeah,
looks
but
really
was
cool.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to. Okay, but before we get to scout, the very first unit you're ever going to have is the founder unit, or what later on is going to be the settler units when you're doing new settlements.
It doesn't
Movement
look like
3,
there's anything special about them except that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it does say movement 3, and I think we've always had 2, but we don't know how the movement scaling on the map, though, so it's hard to tell if that's something. But they have some
Yeah.
defense.
Yeah, they do have a defense stat, don't they?
Yeah. Which previously, nope, they were just auto-captured, but in this case, they can fight back a little bit.
Well, I guess no more just declaring war on the AIs because they sent a settler next to your warrior early in the game and didn't escort it.
You'll
Or
have
at
to
the-
ask yourself if it's worth a negative 150 influence.
Or at the very least, it will take multiple turns to potentially kill it, and they might have founded the city anyway while you're doing that.
Yeah. And scouts, obviously, because we were just talking about those, and even one of the screenshots here, well, it all shows the guy up on his little lookout going, So they have a search function which lets them see a little, which will reveal discoveries, even ones that are off in the fog of war. So that way you know, oh, I should go that way to find the goodie. And they also can have the lookout thing, which is like being fortified because they're staying still, but they see a greater distance for fog bust. So that way you could park somebody out there in an area that you haven't settled yet, but you know there's another civ out that way. So you can see if they're coming to settle it or if that's their army headed this way.
Yeah, and you don't have to put like a line of units or scouts or whatever along your borders for visibility. It looks like you could just put one and it's going to be able to cover a huge
Yeah.
swath of territory.
Yeah, it should make sneaking up on someone really hard if they put a scout between you and them.
But then that's also one less scout that you have out exploring, and we don't know how big the maps are going to be, so there could be opportunity cost there too.
Probably.
I like how, I think they mentioned this, but I like how all the units, where there's like 10 people in the units, they all are dressed a little differently.
Oh, yes, because each of the different civs scout is going to look a little different.
No, I mean, if you look at the pictures
Oh,
under
you
Army
mean-
Commander,
Where they were saying that they sort
like
did a
some of them have
randomization.
helmets, some of them have helmets, some of them aren't wearing shirts, some of them
Well,
have...
I was assuming that was because those are different units that are stacked under the commander in the army.
No,
this is the
even
thing we're
in
talking
individual
about as-
units.
Yeah, as an art thing, they gave them sort of a mix and match type thing, so it would look like it was individuals. I don't know if later on, like in the modern or exploration of modern eras, they might be a little more similar.
Like, look
'Cause I
under the
can't-
Med J, that picture there, how they're
Ah,
all
yeah.
different.
Yeah, I see that now.
Oh, that's our scouts. We do know we literally have a merchant unit that we're going to be controlling for the trade routes. Don't know as much about everything they're going to do right now. We just saw them. It's same thing with the trade ships.
I really hope they're the same unit.
Yeah, it's unclear right now about that. It would be cool if it's two different units. We've already been exhaustively over the army commander. We did see on a couple of the interludes there that there are fleets, and they look very pretty. More specific units. Okay, we have the Medjay. This is the one that Spiffing Brett went and exploited the crap out of because what was it? It's like they
Has no maintenance.
yeah. So he just kept spamming them and spamming them and it was a little ridiculous.
And we don't need to go through all of the individual unique units, but
yeah, but to give you an idea about strength, this is a combat strength of 20 compared to the 10 for the Settler and the Scout. So
it probably gets quickly outscaled by regular military.
Yeah, it does say it's
units.
only a tier 1. So they do mention.
It seems like instead of having a melee unit in this game, they're infantry units, rather than it being a specific modern era unit.
Yeah, they just decided to rename the melee class as the infantry class, which
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Pretty well just correct.
I wanted to point out the Jati? I don't know. Egyptian unique unit, but it refers to it as a great person. So we know we have them in a different format.
Can only be trained in cities with a necropolis, and the one you receive is random. So presumably they're all individuals.
Yes. Though it doesn't give us any idea what we're doing with them, but one, great people, two, thing there.
So somewhat like the Commandant General.
Yes. There are very many ones, but you don't know what you're going to get.
Still don't have that achievement.
Yeah, that's harder. Songhai's got a unique merchant. We do know that they're galleys. Tier 2, apparently, sailing unit. Tier 2 antiquity naval unit. So what's a tier 1? The galley is normally the starter ship.
We don't know yet, because the demo we saw didn't have a city on the water.
Yeah,
earlier Civ games did have units that preceded the galleys, though. I remember like Civ 3, it was like the Kurog or whatever. It was like a tiny little boat that like had almost no like defense strength. So
yeah, I think Trireme's been a unique unit more recently, but that used to be your early boat.
Yeah, that was the Civ 4 boat, I think. Like, because galley was the troop transport and the Trireme was the fighter.
Ah, okay, yeah. I'm so used to them embarking by themselves now. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some unique cavalry and boats, and
we don't need to go over the individual unique ones because they're all going to change anyway.
Yeah, although I think it's interesting on the Morian unique settler adds +2 happiness on its city halls. Interesting. Yeah, we can see that we still have archers and chariots and Roman legions, of course, and a unique commander for the Romans. We have a picture of the Mongol horse archer. A lot more, of course, elephants and tanks and the usuals. We don't have a lot of details on some of the other ones.
Well, I can tell that one of the tanks is a T-34 and one of them is a Sherman. I don't know about anything else.
Yeah, they were unsure if that was going to be a unique unit or Civ-related or what yet.
We just need a tank designer.
Oh, no.
Just go ask the War Thunder forums?
Yeah, they'll give us military documents that we need.
No, please no. Let's talk about terrain.
Whee!
There's very little to say other than we now have navigable rivers. There are non-navigable rivers, which are called minor rivers, which are just like the ones from previous games that go in between tiles. There are complex terrain changes, differing levels of elevation, waterfalls, and the maximum discoverable size of the map is limited in each age and expands at the start of the next age.
It's over. I have the high ground.
Yeah, well, I got archers. They can shoot up.
Yes, but not as effectively as archers can shoot down. I've played Bannerlord. I know how this works.
But aren't the Jedi an infantry unit?
The only known resources are fish, elephants, camels, and whatever those are. I think they're dates.
Dates?
Coconuts.
Yeah, it's
they
dates.
Look like coconuts or something.
It's dates. The way they describe it and the look of it, it's dates.
Some resources invalidate in other ages. Some can be specifically assigned to settlements to provide a bonus independent of improvement yield.
Ridiculous. I can farm elephant tusks into the modern era.
I think that just about covers everything on our list of important things to cover on the freshly announced Civilization 7 visible, or what's it called, gameplay reveal. There's plenty of stuff we didn't talk about. We'll get to that in later episodes, I'm sure. But we have now been going for a very long time and should probably move on to the outro. which is me. So thank you everyone for joining us on episode. Well, this is going to be episode 439 because this is going to be a two-part episode. I'm CanusAlbinus, and I've been joined with Makahlua.
I hope coffee's a resource because I need some.
TheMeInTeam.
The MeInTeam command you. Togetherness.
And MegaBearsFan.
And this time the game is not releasing near my birthday. No Civ birthday present for me.
It's Valentine's Day instead.
The perfect gift.
For your Valentine, which is yourself.
Harsh, man. Our viewers. Listeners.
Not
That's-
okay.
That's brutal.
All right, fine. Their partners can buy it for them or something.
That's quite a
Yeah.
I just about said Vampire's Day.
Vampire's Day.
A sparkling vampire has given you Civilization 7.
Oh no.
What a disaster.
Civilization 3, 4, 5, 6, Beyond Earth, and 7 sound clips copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright the Polycast at thepolycast.net.